So here we go. You guys are going to follow along. And we are going to post pictures of this one at the end of the class session. Or I'll give you guys the afternoon. So we'll say 6 o'clock. Was that better that I gave you guys that extra time for the tiles on Friday? All right. So a racquetball sized chunk of clay. If you're really into understanding how much the weight is, then this is probably about 3/4 of a pound. We're going to start by getting it into a nice round ball. I ran out of the same clay that you guys are using, so I'm having to go to porcelain. And I'm going to grab my little board here. I don't know where I put it. Give me 1 second. There's one. Be back in a second. Love it. All right. A little camera around. Okay, cool. So here we are. Now, again, thinking about the way that you guys are starting to understand the material, you are going to choose ways that you like to work more than the other. And basically all that means, when you're making stuff, you're going to like rolling things out. You're gonna like making the little pancakes or little tortillas using your hands. And there's going to be different ways of working that you're all going to like to do things. Now, when I'm trying to teach you this stuff, I'm trying to teach you like general ways of working. Like, it never ever has to be pigeonholed to the point where you're just working with one technique or one like specific thing. Find the way that you guys like to work and then do it that way, okay? Now, again, we're going to be working with pretty thin stuff right here. And if you want to roll it out using a rolling pin, go for it. And that is going to be an excellent way to get a nice, consistent, even little plate. Now, for me, for today's class, this one is going to be 100% by hand. Let me see if I got any emails real quick, because I know everybody's probably finding the Zoom link. Ooh, I don't know how I'm going to do attendance with this stuff. Okay, so I'm flattening it out. I'm going to try and keep the integrity of this hand-built look. At its thickest point, right here, middle of this thing, now I'm going to want to start tapering towards the outside. And basically all that means, as it's spinning, I'm going to pinch it outwards using my bowl as a guide, my little pot right here as a guide. And this is going to help us, the pot is going to help us get a nice even, like a disc, like a nice even disc, because we want it to be nice and round. And it's going to be really easy. You guys are going to love the way this works. And now I want to clean it up, tapering it off. If you have one of those lazy Susans, now would be the time to pull one of those out, because as it's spinning, you can just kind of compress it. Spin it, you know what I'm saying? And then once we get our flatness, where we're happy with it, then we're going to start focusing on what some of the details are going to look like. Because for the most part, we want to get this thing inside of our little plate. Inside of our little bowl. And we want to let it sit there. We don't want to mess with it. This is the type of project, these are the types of things that are easy to make, that have a lasting impression. And all I mean by that is that they look good, people will see them and say, oh my gosh, that's so cute, that's so neat, make me one, is what they'll say. Dude, I want that, that's so cool. And then you get to impress all your buddies because you got good at making stuff in Mr. Parkhill's ceramics class. All right, Now here's what I'm going to do, and you guys can choose to work with this however you want. I'm going to make sure that I'm understanding that one of these sides is going to be my inside. Well, so we want the inside for the most part to be smooth, but that's not necessarily what it has to be. It does not necessarily have to be perfectly smooth. You can add textures to it, and textures are always going to be encouraged because they offer interest. All right, now again, as I'm peeling this thing up, the clay is very soft. You can see it's really tapered off towards the outer edge, and in the middle, it's a little bit more thick. All that's going to do for us is give us a little bit of weight in the center so that it balances itself. And eventually, once the thing is leather hard, we'll be able to grind it down on the floor to give it its foot, okay? Now here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna treat the inside of this plate with a surface texture. And I get to decide what that looks like. I'm probably going to keep it simple because I don't necessarily love overly thought out things. Get it nice and flat, and I'm going to pick one of my tools that I'm going to work with. All right? Again, anything will create texture. Literally anything. Maybe I want to use the end of this Sharpie. Might be interesting. And I'm going to create a circular pattern. So I'm going to start by compressing the inside. This looks like the Empire, the gear from the Empire from Star Wars. I'm going to compress in a floral pattern wherever there's space. I'm going to extend outwards. Put another one right there. That means I can get 3 on each corner. And this is kind of cool because it's easy. I'm not having to overly think about this too much. All right, so I've got my texture. Cool. If I did this properly, it's going to be nice and flat on the outside, but I'm not going to be done right there. For me personally, I am going to, I don't know, no, I'd leave it like that. I'm going to leave it like that. All right, so check this out. Here's where the fun begins. You don't have to form this into a dish. You can allow this guy, I was just making sure it was nice and centered right there, to gently compress. Each time I spin this thing around, I'm pushing down towards the middle of this thing. A little bit more, a little bit more. So that it has a, I'm not sure what the, like a disc shape to it, like a plate shape. Just gently compressing. And legit, I'm almost done with this thing. I really like that pattern actually. The end of this thing is awesome. That's super cool. Now, you can kind of see if I hold it up at an angle, I'm going to try not to lose it right there, but it is dipping down into the little vase right there. Another way to simply do this to extend it into the thing would be to let it pat, and that's going to allow it to drop a little bit. Now, definitely not done right here. The last thing that I want to do with this before I forget about it until this afternoon is I want to cut some of the exterior of this thing. Now, it would definitely help to have another circle that's the same size, because you don't really want to flip this thing over too much because you're going to lose some of that shape, right? I could have cut this thing down at the beginning of it. I forgot to, so that's no big deal. But for me, right here, right now, I know I have a bunch of little circles that are different sizes. And so I'm going to use one of these guys. Oh, here we go. as a guide. All right, because I completely messed that one up when I was starting. That's perfectly 4 inches. I'm going to set it up right in the middle as best as I can. And then I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm going to gently cut the circle. Again, I completely forgot to cut the extra. Get rid of that right there. Guilty as charged, but all is not lost when you are somebody who can adapt. Get rid of the extra, and now I'm going to gently pinch upwards. Creating a nice clean rim. If you really want to, you can add a little water, smooth off that outer edge. Again, really easy way of doing this. Making an interesting looking dish. Now remember that if I went with 4 inches, my biggest, this thing is going to end up shrinking about 10 to 12% with the clay that we use. So 4 inches, you're going to lose about 3/4 of an inch or so. I don't know about the math on that one, but it'll be close enough. Now here's the cool thing about this textured dish. This guy gets to sit until it's completely done. Like to the point where it's completely dry. I can put this outside. Don't put it in the sun necessarily. It's supposed to be pretty dry today, I think. But let it sit until it's good to go. And that's it. And that's it. A quick 10 to 15 minute dish. Textures, interesting, always. When we go to glaze this thing, it's going to look cool because those textures are the lines are going to be exposed. All right? And it is a great way of making fun, tiny little projects. All right? Now the cool thing about this is if I know that I want to be giving gifts later on, I can knock these things out pretty quickly. All right? What questions do you have for me? What questions do you have for me? Who's got them? Who's got them? That's it. Again, I did it again.